Hello everyone, Matt Piper here. Thanks for joining me, really appreciate it. Now, I've been wanting to put this out for a while. As always though, life, coronavirus, work gets in the way. But throughout this coronavirus, I have been doing a lot of self-reflection. You know, one thing that has come to me is to develop the ability to act, take action. I did this speech at the BAME Football Forum, and it was about racism and two things that I think get in the way and for people to develop and move forward. It went down well on the night, and I just wanted to share it with a wider audience so people can look at it, dissect it, and think about the sort of stuff that I'm saying. Now, it's probably going to take about 15 minutes, but if you can, stick with me for that time, hopefully you may learn something, you may disagree with what I have to say, but it may open up a further debate to move things forward. And I think it's a real important time to talk about, racism and discrimination in the current climate that we're living in. A lot of people are confused about the Black Lives Matter movement. So hopefully this can shed some light on it. Here's the time to act. When the idea is hot and the emotion is strong. And that's clearly what's happening at the minute with racism and discrimination. Before the feeling passes or the idea begins to dim, action is required immediately. Action as soon as possible. Because if we don't act when the idea is hot and the emotion is strong, we can call it the law of diminishing intent. And I think that happens a lot when racial issues come up, especially in football. And I've spoke about this before. People tend to discuss it immediately, but then don't take action and move it on to that next level. And I feel that's what we need to do. We intend to do something when the idea strikes us. We intend to when the emotion is high. But if we don't translate that into action fairly soon, that's when the intent starts to diminish. And that seems a revolving pattern, when racial issues come up, especially in football. This is the time. Black Lives Matter, and we need to act. Here's my story and more. And this is something we work on at the FSD Academy that I own. We represent 17 different nationalities. We've been running for 3 years. We have never had one racial incident. And it's because we try to simplify complex conversations at the FSD Academy. And we do that in something that we call a safe environment. Now, the two areas I want to look at today, in particular, what I feel can get in the way of moving forward when we're talking about racism and discrimination. One is language. Language can be the problem and the solution. Too scared to talk, but talking is needed. But what is the correct language terminology? Who said or did what to who, in what context? Intent, ignorance, or innocence? So what do we mean when we talk about language? Now, for me, language can get in the way. And the reason why I say it can get in the way is because people are scared to use certain words, or they don't know if this word's correct or if this word is politically correct. And what do we do when we're scared about something? We shut down. We don't talk. We'd rather not say anything instead of saying something wrong. This is why it's so important to have a safe environment, what we'll come on to later on. Because when you have a safe environment, you can ask these difficult, awkward questions and people can answer them. And then you're going to know and you're going to learn through experience on the type of terminology you can use, the type of language that's acceptable to all, and it's going to help move the process forward without the fear of being vilified for certain words or language that you use. The second area that I'd like to look at is the same scenario, the differing opinions. Stay calm, talk and educate, challenge, report, or zero tolerance. And what do we mean about same scenario, different opinion or differing opinions? Now, for instance, if I am racially abused or I feel that there is some kind of unconscious racism gone on, a next person has the same exact situation happen to them. Their view on it might be far different to my view on it. And the reason why when we talk about a safe environment in a little while and using the ECA scale, it shows us where different things fall on the scale for different people. And there may be some kind of general consensus that brings the middle closer, allowing us to all move forward in a more constructive, more concise way. As I say, we use a safe environment at the FSD Academy, and that is where open discussions and opinions can be spoken about. There's no judgment, there's no fear, there's lots of questions, and hopefully then there's answers and solutions. Myself, the staff at FSD Academy, all the students and the players, we got together and we created something called an ECA scale, which is Educate, Challenge, Action, where any scenario can be discussed, personal, in the media, or hypothetical. So educate. In the area of educate, we've put in there misunderstandings, terminology, confusion, general differences. And for that, we would always stay calm, talk, and just educate. In the challenge part of the scale is banter, jokes, stereotyping. Is there any intent? Was it unconscious racism? And for this, we stay calm again, but we do not accept it. We challenge, talk, and we escalate if appropriate. And as always, we educate. And then the last part of the scale is action, where things can go on there that are verbal or physical abuse, trolling, conscious racism. And for things that go into this section of the ECA scale, we say that we should report to appropriate authority, police, but there is still the option and hopefully the delivery of education. So here's 3 personal ones for me, so we can talk through where it would sit on the scale of our ECA scale that, you know, the staff and the players and the students at the FSD Academy created. So the first one is half caste. So when I was younger, and it still happens today, people refer to me as a half caste person. You know, times have moved on. To be honest, this is no longer really acceptable if you refer to someone as a half caste. But what happens when I am called a half caste? Do I lose my head? Do I start scrapping or try and beat the person up? Call them a racist and never speak to them again? No. For me and the players at the FSD Academy, this sort of scenario should go on the scale under educate. And when we know where it is on the scale, then we know how we can deal with the situation. We would talk about it, we would stay calm, and we would just let the person know that really that kind of language is no longer politically correct or acceptable, and then we should educate, give differing options that the person could use instead of half caste. So we stay nice and calm and we just educate. Scenario 2 would be a story from my Sunderland days. I first got to Sunderland 2002, and the MASSEUR, I went in for my first massage at the football club. It was my first day actually, and I said, is it all right if I get a massage? The guy's name was Mickey Holland, really nice guy, but he said, I'm really sorry, Pipes, we got a rule here at Sunderland that we get all the white lads massage first, and then when we're finished with the white lads, then it's the black lads' turn at the end. That's how we run things here at Sunderland. So I sort of said, are you joking? But I stayed calm, but I said, are you joking? Is this some kind of joke? And he was like, no, I'm being deadly serious. That's how we run things here. So in my mind, as a young lad, I was only 20, I thought, right, okay, I won't kick off. It's the first day, but at some point, I'm going to have to challenge this behaviour. So that's where it sits on our scale. And I'm going to educate him to let him know that this kind of thought process is not acceptable to me. So I would challenge it. I went and sat down, and then 2 seconds later, all the players and the staff ran in and laughed and joked. It was banter. It was a joke. They decided to do that joke on me from the start. And, you know, at the time, I didn't really laugh, but I had in my mind, right, it's time to educate. And from the very next day, I educated the guy and said that it's not acceptable. I understand that it was banter and it was a joke, so I didn't kick off, I didn't lose my head. But that kind of behaviour definitely needed challenging for me and educating at the same time, so he understood why it wasn't acceptable to me and, you know, people of my colour. And then scenario 3 was one of the worst incidents that ever happened in my life. And this scenario would definitely come under the scale, under action. And that's what I did after this incident. It ran its course. I got on a bus in quite a heavily white populated part of Leicestershire. It was out in the countryside. I was only young, I was 15 at the time, and I suffered abuse for 15-20 minutes on the back of a bus with two clearly racist young men, 21-year-olds, I think had been drinking and taking drugs, and they proceeded to slap, punch, call me every racist name under the sun and say that I should go back to my own country. But at the time I challenged it. At the time I tried to educate, why are you doing this? It's not right. I was born in Leicestershire. We don't care if you was born in Leicestershire. You need to go back to your own country where you black people come from. And the N-word was used, and it was physical and mental abuse in the racial kind, and it was not nice. So when I got off the bus, I reported it to the school, I reported it to the bus driver. I didn't go as far as to reporting it to the police, but I should have done. But I tried to educate while I was on there with these boys why the abuse was going on. I definitely challenged it, but at the end of the day, it sits under a part of the ECA scale where it has to sit under action, because that kind of behaviour is not acceptable. So they're my three scenarios. The common theme through all of this is, and that's why the education part runs the whole of the ECA scale, is education is always appropriate. There's more scenarios that have happened over the years, especially now with social media. The young Leicester player Hamza Chowdhury has suffered a lot of it, as many young black footballers do, on social media with trolling. There was the Bernardo Silva incident, and these all can be talked through. You can come up with your own scenarios, whether they're just made up, they're factual, they're in the media, and you can use the ECA scale and a safe environment to talk them through with small groups, to really push forward education progress, how we can move things forward and how we can do it in a constructive but safe way, where people are not fearing about asking questions or saying the wrong things, whether you're white or black or any colour, any religion, any creed. A safe environment where we can move the process forward. And this Black Lives Matter movement is a very good start, but now we need to start putting in constructive ways where people can move it forward, because action quite clearly now needs to continue. We don't want the idea to be hot and the emotion to be strong and then let it dim out because we didn't act and we didn't have the intent to follow something through after this Black Lives movement has started something very important. Use the ECA scale. It can be used in communities, schools, colleges, families, social groups, sports clubs, and so much more. It's a quite simple way. And if you want the ECA scale sending through and, slideshow and talk that I've put together, I will send it to anyone that wants it, because it's so important. I think I said at the start that I work in an academy that I started in 2017 that represent different nationalities, and we haven't had one single racial incident. So we know this ECA scale works. We know a safe environment works to help move the conversation forward, and it helps us to all start taking action for something that should have been a thing of the past years and years ago, which is racism and discrimination. The ECA scale can be also used in all sorts of discriminations to move the conversation, everything forward. I really thank you for listening in. I hope you've learnt something, and I hope that you will take action against any kind of discrimination that you see, you witness, because we have to call it out. We have to be strong against it, and we have to be united against it. It's so important. It's something that plays a huge part in my life, and I will always try and take action and move the conversation forward. Thanks for listening. If you want me to email the contents of this talk over to you or the ECA scale, please just get in touch with me. Many thanks. Take care. See you soon.